Welcome. I am Karen Booth, and I am here today at FoodChain in Lexington, Kentucky, with Kristin Hughes, who is the co-executive director and also director of education and outreach. Thank you so much for letting us come today.
Absolutely. Thanks for your interest in FoodChain and wanting to learn and share a little bit more.
Great. I've been to FoodChain before. It's been in Lexington since 2011, right?
Yes.
And it has grown so much. It is so much more than where it started, and it's very exciting. Could you tell us a little bit about it?
Yeah, absolutely. So FoodChain was founded in 2011 as a kind of response to food access in this area. So 40508, the zip code, is one of Lexington's largest and oldest food deserts. There is not a grocery store within walking distance. It's really difficult for people with transportation issues. We've got quite a few neighbors in this area that are in wheelchairs, so it can be really hard if you've got to go over 2 miles, you don't have a car, it's hot outside, to get to a grocery store and then bring everything back. So we really started with looking at the food system, looking at how to educate people a little bit more about the food system. And it started with understanding where food comes from and how to grow your own food. So in 2013, we opened Kentucky's first commercial indoor aquaponics farm. That was step one, phase one of FoodChain. And so we grow tilapia, and we grow lettuce and leafy greens on the farm. And part of the opening of the farm was a partnership with Chef Weta Michael in opening Smithtown Seafood, which is a seafood restaurant which shares a door. Their door to the kitchen is on our farm. And so we sell the majority of our lettuce to Smithtown Seafood as a way to really showcase what a hyper-localized food system looks like. In being able to provide that access to fresh ingredients, fresh food for the neighborhood, for the community, and show that, you don't have to import the food. You can grow it right here.
So could you tell me a little bit more about how you all are working with local farmers?
Yeah, absolutely. So when we opened our teaching and processing kitchen, one of the things we really wanted to focus on was reducing food waste and being able to work with local farmers. And so what we did is we started purchasing seconds and surplus from local farmers. Okay. So if you think of, these are often called the ugly fruits and vegetables. I like to always tell people that grocery stores, while the produce is beautiful, has somewhat distorted our view of what food looks like and how it grows, because it grows in all shapes and sizes. Carrots have 3 feet. They don't just look like a perfect carrot.
We have that in our garden, actually. We like to pull out every year different funny shaped vegetables and take photos of them.
Exactly. And they're actually more fun to cook with, especially when you're teaching kids. But what we wanted to do is oftentimes this turns into food waste on the farm because farmers don't have an outlet for it. So it oftentimes would get thrown away or composted. But there is still hunger that is occurring in our community. And so we wanted to, 1, combat hunger, and 2, put some money back into the farmers' pockets, pay them for this food because it is usable food. And so that's kind of where we started, and we have just grown since then. We started with partnering with just a few farmers, and now our focus is really, when we say local, we're talking about in Kentucky, and supporting Kentucky farmers. And so we're purchasing as much as we can when things are in season. We do a lot of processing of that to extend the seasonality. So dicing, blanching, freezing, and then we can pull that out in the winter and have some fresh produce that we're able to turn into a meal. And then we also give away a lot of food. We really believe in trying to make things more accessible to the community, and if that means finding funders who are willing to pay for the food so that we can then provide it for free, that's a lot of what we do.
That's right. Like I said, there's so many pieces of FoodChain now. It's grown so much, and so the last time I was here,
yes,
I was volunteering to help with a big cleanup day
Yes.
for a grocery.
Yes.
Can you tell us a little bit?
Absolutely. So when the kitchen opened in 2017, there was a sign put over. We have a corner space that is kind of part of our footprint, but it is not renovated. Like just yesterday, I think we were hearing a bird flying around in there. So we use it mainly as storage, but we put a sign over that space that said FoodChain's Future Grocery. And so we've always had a plan that phase 3 of FoodChain is to open a neighborhood green grocery, really focusing on that food access piece and making it a reality for this neighborhood. I mean, there used to be a bakery here where folks would, that grew up in this community can talk about buying, 5 loaves of bread for like $1, and there's nowhere that you can do that now. And so we want to take our relationships with local farmers and make that something that is a reality for the community by opening a neighborhood green grocery. So we have set our sights on that. We have begun a capital campaign. We've begun some clean out. We're working with an architecture firm now. We have support from the city of Lexington to make this happen. And by sometime in 2026, not by 2026, sometime in 2026, we will be opening a neighborhood green grocery where access to like the seconds and surplus that we're purchasing from farmers can then extend to the community. They can come to our neighborhood green grocery and buy, a sweet potato as big as your head and feed your family for a month.
I saw some of those sweet potatoes
Yes.
here. It was funny. There was a huge box of gigantic
Yes.
sweet potatoes, and a bunch of people were sort of standing around it like this, looking into it, like what happens next? It's great. Are there any other pieces that you want to talk about?
Yeah, with the neighborhood green grocery, one of the things that we have always pushed and worked towards is really creating these food curiosity opportunities for students in the neighborhood. So we used to do a snacks program on Fridays so that kids, when they were coming off the bus, coming home from school for the weekend, we would have a different locally sourced and made snack that they could try as a way to really introduce them to new foods. We have a lot of kids that catch the bus in the morning right across the street. And one of our goals with this neighborhood green grocery is to be able to open in the early morning hours when kids are walking to the bus stop so they can stop in, get a grab and go breakfast that's going to be higher in protein with local food, just to get their brains going for the day. And then they just walk across the street and get on the bus. But in addition to that, we have been doing a meal delivery program since 2020, really. So it is a box. If you think of almost like HelloFresh, we curate a box of local ingredients with recipes, with some education about the farmers, about the local produce, history of food, that we deliver to about 150 households every week. And so our goal with opening this green grocery is being able to return some choice to that, because right now it's just what we choose, but we would love to be able to extend, have a recipe and it's choose if you want a sweet potato, a regular potato, a butternut squash, and have some choice in there so that as families and folks are getting more used to utilizing local produce, they can choose kind of how they want their boxes to look. So we focus a lot on food literacy education. So when I started here in 2019, I was very involved in the farm to school movement, really teaching about Kentucky agriculture. It was something, I worked at St. Peter and Paul. I was your daughter's Spanish teacher.
Yes.
And I was doing that work at St. Peter and Paul and realized there is a greater need, especially in Lexington, which is an urban setting, for teaching kids about where their food comes from, how it grows, what agriculture is. And so when I came to FoodChain, we really started focusing on food literacy. And this did come from my education background of thinking of literacy as the vocabulary that you need to understand a subject. Reading a recipe is going to require a different skill set than like reading a book for enjoyment. How do we introduce the vocabulary so that kids especially can talk about food in a positive way? So a couple of the things that we do in our food literacy classes, we say, you can't say, ew, gross, yuck, disgusting. Instead, I say, you're allowed to not like something. You cannot like a recipe. But I want you to find other words, other descriptive words that are describing why you don't like it. Is it too salty? Is it too sweet? Is it bitter? We try and introduce a lot of these flavor words, texture words, really to encourage kids to think about their own personal food preferences, and then translate that into like talking about food in a positive way as it relates to what they like.
It sounds like you have them really involved in it, that they're making their own decisions.
Yes, we always talk about like creating future food leaders. And we also do something called aquaponics education. So we started a classroom aquaponics program where we are taking our farm and creating mini versions of it in classrooms across Lexington, really across the state. We actually just went to Eastern Kentucky a couple of weeks ago to install a vertical aquaponics system where we are able to take what is happening on our farm, which is, we're using the fish, the waste from the fish is creating nutrients for the plants. The plants are absorbing that, it's cleaning the water. So we always like preface by saying, our farm uses 90% less water than traditional agriculture to produce the same amount. And it's a really sustainable way of thinking about agriculture in the future, as well as looking at abandoned buildings and how they can be turned into food production for cities across the nation, not just here.
Absolutely. Perfect way of rethinking and being innovative.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Oh, wow. Okay. I also saw on your website that you have poo available.
We do. Yes. So it's not just like fish poop. So we take out the solids, we mix it with oxygen, it's in water. So it's a darker water, but it doesn't smell, and it's really a really great fertilizer. Like if you want the best tomatoes in your neighborhood, you need to get our fish poo.
Get your fish poo here.
Yes.
One of the other things I saw on your website are your core values. Mm-hmm. And not only is this incredibly important for especially nonprofits, I think, to do this kind of hard work of knowing what your core values are. You all have amazing core values. These are great. You should go online and look at them. But I'll tell you really quickly what they are. The first core value I love is persist. Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
We don't give up.
Don't give up ever. And then innovate. Yes. This wouldn't be happening if you didn't innovate, right?
Yeah.
The amazing sort of deck of cards that has fallen is because of the constant innovation, rethinking, relearning.
Yes.
Connect.
Yeah. So important. We talk about, like for us, Connect, it's all about, making connections with local farmers, making connections with the community, making connections with other nonprofit organizations. One of the things that happened during the pandemic, everyone shut down and FoodChain instead exploded.
Right.
We did not close. We grew during that time and started feeding Lexington, essentially. We were able to take in donations from farmers, from restaurants, turn those into meals, distribute them all over the city. But it was because of our connections with, other food producers, with restaurants, with community centers that made that happen.
And it's the connections that you made ahead of time, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you're constantly connecting. And then the last core value is support.
Yes. Support for the community, but also support for our staff, support for farmers. I mean, you need a support system, and we have created like a very unique support system that helps everyone.
Fantastic. So this is amazing work. I've met quite a few of the people who work here, and they are definitely led by their heart in feeding people. So what drew you into this work?
Yeah, so I had been working at St. Peter and Paul as a Spanish teacher. I became very involved in the farm to school work when we decided to change up the way that we were doing lunch in the cafeteria, started sourcing from local farmers, doing scratch cooking. And one of the things that we focus on here at FoodChain, and I think that I had always focused on, was like, when you have access, you also need education to go along with it. You can't just give somebody food but not tell them about like why this is important or where it comes from. And so I started doing a lot of education in my Spanish classes. We started a school garden. We talked about, planting different fruits and vegetables, the seasonality, and all in Spanish. And so I realized just from working with a select group of students at this school that they didn't really have much of a clue of where food came from and what does that mean for the greater population of Lexington. And so a position became available at FoodChain to work at the farmers market during the summer. So we run a kids club at the farmers market that provides kids with vouchers to buy their own fruits and vegetables while they are also learning about the food system, connecting with farmers. And after doing that for the summer, the director of education position became available, and I realized I felt this need to do more than just work at one school, but be able to go into all of the schools across Lexington, share more about Kentucky agriculture, about just food literacy in general, and be able to use, I am bilingual in Spanish, so be able to use that and offer that in both languages. And so that's kind of what happened. And I'm so happy here. Yeah.
I'm so glad. And, I don't know if you get this a lot, but I want to thank you for being brave.
Yeah.
I mean, you're bravely feeding people, you and everyone else here. You guys are taking that extra step. You're being vulnerable. You're putting yourself out there, and you are being brave and feeding people. So thank you. People don't tell you enough. Do you feel brave?
I do. Yeah. Yes, I would say yes. I mean,
that's great.
We have done a lot of things through our innovation here where we're like, we don't know if this is going to work.
Let's give it a shot.
Let's try and see.
That's awesome. Thank you so much for having us.
Absolutely.
And it's a beautiful day here in Kentucky. We got to be outside and hear the community around us.
Yes.
Thanks again.
Yeah, thank you.